Today's video is all about preventing chicken health problems before they can get started. But before we get into that, I have a channel service announcement. I have launched a brand new channel called Meat and Three Veg. It's all about outdoor cooking and having conversations about interesting topics. I would love your feedback on what topics you would like me to talk about on that channel. I will link to the first video on that channel at the end of this video and in the description. But that is enough of the channel announcements. Let's get into chicken health today's video. Let's talk about keeping your chicken flock healthy. It's a really important thing to do. We all want healthy chickens, and it's much better to prevent health issues before they arise. So we're going to talk about all the things that are important for maintaining a really healthy, happy chicken flock. Housing your chicken coop is really important for the health of your chickens. You want to have a chicken coop that is big enough for the number of chickens you have in it, because they're going to poop at least half their day's poop at nighttime. So we don't want them to just be sitting there breathing in the ammonia from that overnight. And you want to have your roosts, that you have enough roosts for the number of chickens that you have, that your roosts are nice and smooth without splinters that your chickens might get stuck on or hurt their feet. One of the main reasons that chickens hurt their feet is from roosts that have rough patches and also from jumping down from the roosts. So you want to make sure you've got multiple options for your flock in terms of perch heights, because there's also a good opportunity for them to have some arguments without too much drama about who is the queen of the perch, because the top dog in your chicken coop is going to be able to perch higher, and your lower down in the pecking order hens will perch lower. So it gives them a nice safe opportunity to have those little pecking order arguments. So do think about the surface that your chickens are going to be hopping down onto in the coop when they jump down from their perches. You want to make sure that's a nice soft surface and that there is nothing on the floor that they might hit or bump. So you want to be careful about putting things like food or water in the coop, which I don't put in the coop anyway, but if you have a different setup, you might have it in there. But in like bricks or lower perches, things like that, make sure your chickens have a nice clear area to get down from their perches in the morning. The other thing in your chicken coop that's really important is adequate ventilation. As much ventilation as possible is a good thing, because chickens are going to be in the coop for quite a few hours and they're going to be breathing, and breathing is going to make condensation. If you don't have enough ventilation in your coop, that condensation is going to settle on the roof and the wall, and it's going to make the coop damp and it's going to drop down on your chickens, and that's just not a healthy environment. It encourages mold to grow, just not a nice place for your chickens. So you want to make sure there's lots of ventilation in your coop. So really pay attention to that. Figure out how you can get as much ventilation as possible into your chicken coop. The next thing to talk about in terms of keeping your chickens healthy is their run, or the area that they're going to be spending most of their day in. Now, most people will probably have a run that's enclosed, that their chickens are going to stay in most of the time. I let my chickens wander around my entire backyard, but that might not be for you. So the surface of your run, so what is down on the ground, really matters. You do not want to have a run that is either just dust blowing everywhere in the summertime or a wet, muddy, disgusting, icky place in the wintertime. So I would highly recommend using a thick mulch to make a composting chicken run sort of system. That's the system that I use. You can also use surfaces like sand, things like that, or grass if you can keep grass growing in your run all year round, which you're probably not going to be able to do. Chickens are probably gonna just strip that back and you'll end up with mud. So see how you go, but my recommendation is a nice thick layer of wood chip and mulch and organic material. It's going to be nice and soft for your chickens. You're going to get compost from it that you can use out in the garden. And it really helps to manage the manure that the chickens are going to be depositing. Because what we really want to avoid is the chicken poop sitting on the surface of the run for long periods of time. It smells, it's not healthy for the chickens, and if they end up getting a little cut or a graze on their feet or something like that, and they're running around in their own poop, then you've got a much higher chance of them getting an infection than if it's a nice composting surface where there's all sorts of things happening and that poop is just essentially going to disappear and not be a problem. But basically, if you can smell manure in your run, that's not okay. It's not healthy, so you need to work out how you can have a nice, clean, sweet smelling chicken run. Something that I like to have in my chicken run is multiple heights of surfaces that my chickens can jump up and down from. So that could be things like a chair, it could be perches, roosting bars set up out in the run, so that during the day they're practicing going up and down over multiple different heights. But the main reason that I like to have those multiple heights is that it keeps them fit, healthy, and strong going up and down. They're practicing that jump up, jump down motion. Their muscles and bones are staying strong because a lot of injuries can happen, especially as your birds are getting older or if they're having a bit of a weight management issue. They can happen when they're jumping down in the morning from their roosting bars to the ground. If they're only doing that once a day, they are not fit and strong for that activity. We really want them doing that lots of times in the day, and that in itself is going to help them to maintain a healthy weight. So it's a bit of a win-win there. So give your chickens lots of different heights to work around and have fun on. What you feed your chickens matters. You want to feed them the highest quality food that you can find, and you want to make sure that that food has a good level of protein in it. I would recommend around 18 to 20% protein if you're buying a food that has the protein written on the bag. I like to add blood and bone meal to my chicken's food to be sure that I'm getting that protein for them. And protein's really important for hens that are laying because they're essentially laying protein. So they're going to need it so they can make those protein-packed eggs for us to eat. And it's really important for young growing chickens, and also really important when your chickens are molting because they need to regrow all their feathers, and feathers are essentially built out of protein. So feed your chickens a good quality, high protein feed all year round, and that will really help you avoid a lot of health problems. A lot of feeds only have around 15% protein, and I would say that that's not really enough. That's really just the minimum. It doesn't give you any sort of leeway for something to go wrong in your flock, a stress or a molting or chickens that are laying lots of eggs. So target that higher 18 to 20% protein. Making sure your laying hens always have calcium available is really important. Even if their layer feed has calcium already included in it, give them separate calcium, either as oyster shell grit or a limestone, something like that. Give them a little dish of it and make sure it's always got some in it, and they will come and eat that as they need to. So in my flock, they will mow through that at this time of the year in the springtime, and I have to refill it all the time. Like every week I'm filling that up again. But in the winter, they don't eat much of it at all. So I really like to make sure they've always got some. They will eat according to their calcium requirements. And the last thing about food that I think is really important is making sure your flock gets fresh food. So that could be grated up raw carrots, it could be access to forage on your lawn or a pasture for them. It could be growing greens for them in the garden or buying greens for them at the grocery store. It's cheaper to grow your own though, and it's pretty easy to grow chicken forage. But essentially on a daily basis, you want them to have fresh, living green foods. If you can let them out to free range a little bit, that is really good. So if that's possible, I'd highly recommend that because they find all sorts of goodies for themselves when they can do that. But if not, do bring them fresh food every day. Now, something related to food is weight management for your flock. Now, some breeds of backyard chickens, particularly things like Orpingtons, Barred Rocks, they have a tendency towards getting quite fat. And that's not good for their health. It puts them at a higher chance for getting injured or picking up a disease or having an issue with egg laying, which can be quite distressing. So it's important that your chickens are encouraged to move and exercise and that you're not overfeeding them. Chickens won't generally eat more energy than they require, but what they will do is they will eat to meet their nutrient requirements. So they will eat to meet their protein or their calcium requirements. So if you're feeding a low protein food, they might overconsume that food in order to get the protein that they need, and then they might be getting too much energy and start getting fat. So keep an eye on their diet, keep an eye on their weight, encourage them to move and exercise as much as possible. That could be with the ups and down surfaces in your chicken run. It could be scattering scratch grains out for them so they have to scratch for it. Just providing opportunities for them to move and stay slim and not fat. That's going to really avoid a lot of health problems arising. I'll just briefly talk about parasite management here because I have a whole video all about that you can check out. But I just want to say that chickens do pick up worms and mites and lice, and it is something that you need to actively work to prevent, and you do need to treat them however regularly is appropriate for your situation. So you can check out the video all about that. But managing parasites in your flock is absolutely essential for keeping them healthy. Just like people, chickens start to have some more issues as they get older. So if you have some elderly hens, that would be any hen sort of over the age of about 3.5 to 4 years old, you're going to have to maybe make some changes to their management to help them stay healthy as they get older. Things you can do is making sure that they have a low roost in the coop if they start to find it challenging to get up higher. You might need to bring food closer to them and make sure that they've got access to water, that they're not getting bullied by their flock mates if they're just getting a little slower as the years go on. So in a few cases, I've needed to specifically feed that one old chicken. I feed the rest of the flock, and then I take some food specifically for that chicken and sort of make sure she's getting enough food. I will keep the other chickens away if she needs some extra help there. So just keep an eye on your chickens as they get older and step in to make sure they're getting what they need if you're seeing them starting to slow down or struggle. Sometimes, no matter what you do, things just go wrong. Chickens can sometimes have a tendency to just want to die, and sometimes there's no explanation for it. So do your best to prevent problems, do your best to treat problems if they arise, but don't beat yourself up if something goes wrong and there was nothing you could do about it. If you apply these tips to your flock, it's absolutely going to help you keep your flock happier and healthier. And that's what being a chicken keeper is all about, doing our best to keep our flock happy and healthy and living their best lives.